Have you ever heard about the mighty women from old stories? If you look back in time, between the pages of history and mystery, you'll find some truly awe-inspiring ladies. Among them are the biblical heroines, women whose courage and strength still speak loudly across centuries. Imagine a time when every decision counted, and each stand taken could be a matter of life and death. That's where these women made their mark. They were more than just characters. They were pillars of power, resilience, and influence. Their legacies continue to inspire us today. The stories of these 6 powerful women in the Bible are not just ancient texts collecting dust. They pack timeless lessons on bravery, loyalty, and faith, values as relevant today as they ever were. From Deborah's leadership in the battle to Esther's pivotal role in saving her people, from Ruth's unwavering commitment to a new faith to Mary Magdalene's profound devotion, from Sarah's enduring hope to Rahab's strategic impact, each tale reveals how these biblical heroines shaped history through faith and fortitude. A journey through the most powerful women in the Bible. The stories of the Bible show a world where women had to fight hard to make their voices heard. Despite that, there were women who rose from the pages, showing strength and wisdom. Women whom I admire for their power and faith. These powerful women in the Bible stood tall amidst trials and showed what it means to be leaders. Let me share with you some of these timeless tales. Eve. She's known as the first woman in the Bible, right from the Garden of Eden. Some people might say she made a big mistake, but think about it. Eve was also the first to face a tough choice. She shows us how to learn from our choices. Sarah. She was Abraham's wife. Sarah waited on God's promise for a very long time. She teaches us patience and how holding on to hope can lead to joy, even when it seems like all hope is gone. Rahab. Her story is about courage and faith in something new. Rahab wasn't born into believing in God. She chose belief over fear when it mattered most, helping spies sent by Joshua. Thanks to her bravery, her name is respected. Deborah. Now she was a leader, a judge during ancient times when men were usually in charge. Deborah led an army into battle because she knew what had to be done and had faith it could be achieved with God's help. Ruth. Her story is about loyalty that goes beyond blood ties, choosing her mother-in-law Naomi's side instead of going back home after being widowed, shows commitment that stands firm even through calamity. Mary, mother of Jesus. Think about Mary's pure trust at such a young age, willing to carry out an extraordinary role despite not understanding everything before her. A pure example of unshakable faith. Each woman's tale brings out different strengths in the scriptures, whether it was Eve's humanity or Deborah's leadership. So why are their stories important? They give us lessons from history, revealing qualities such as bravery, wisdom, and loyalty, and they connect deeply with many people today, just as they did centuries ago. These influential females have been seen by some as just supporting characters, but look closely. They're central figures driving key moments forward. They are indeed women of power within these sacred texts. The tales show it isn't just physical strength that counts, but moral conviction, making them faithful, inspirational figures within holy narratives. It doesn't matter if you're someone reading these words thousands of years later. Their decisions shaped history and showed paths towards becoming better human beings. Their legacy goes beyond lifetimes tucked within ancient verses, providing endless inspiration. It's something special, knowing that within those olden pages lie examples for all humanity. A true testament for strong godly women whose light burns bright, giving rise every day new doors toward becoming more compassionate persons. Indeed, narratives filled with stories of strong women, lighting up generations across time's vast canvas. Section 1. Deborah, the Judge and Prophetess. Deborah was a woman of great importance in the Bible. She was known as a judge and prophetess, roles that showed her strength and wisdom. In the time when Deborah lived, judges were leaders who helped settle disputes among people and gave guidance during tough times. She was one of the only women to have this job, which made her very special. Deborah stood out because she was able to hear God's voice and share His plans with others. This is what made her a prophetess. She had visions where God would tell her things that would happen in the future, which showed that she had a strong connection with Him. She led Israel for many years, and during her time she did something amazing. She guided them through a victorious battle against their enemies. By doing this, people saw Deborah not just as wise but also as brave. More than anything else, Deborah showed that being close to God could make anyone strong enough to lead, even if they were different from what others expected a leader to look like. Deborah was a judge in Israel long ago. She was also called a prophetess because she heard God's words and told them to the people. She led her people with wisdom, telling them what was right and fair. But there came a time when her people, the Israelites, were in big trouble. They were under the power of Jabin, a king from Canaan. This king had a strong army led by Sisera, who had iron chariots that made him almost unbeatable. One day, Deborah sent for Barak and gave him God's message. "Take 10,000 men and go fight Sisera. I will help you win." Barak respected Deborah so much that he said he would only go if she went with him. During the battle, Deborah showed great courage, even though armies back then didn't have many female fighters. She trusted in God, believing that He would do what He promised. She inspired others. Her faith gave strength to the hearts of her soldiers. When they fought, something amazing happened. God sent rain that made the ground all muddy. Sisera's iron chariots got stuck. Because of this, Barak's men won against Sisera's army easily. After their big win, Deborah sang a song full of joy and thanksgiving to God. This story showed everyone how wise and brave she was. People remembered her as one of the first strong women leaders written about in history. Deborah's victory over the Canaanites wasn't just about fighting. It was about standing up for what was right with wisdom and bravery. Her story tells us that anyone can be used to do great things when they are willing to listen to good advice and be brave enough to act on it. Section 2. Esther. The Queen Esther is one of the most famous women in the Bible. Her story is full of drama and courage. I love telling it because it shows how simple life can turn into an amazing tale of guts and honor. Once upon a time in Persia, Esther began her life like any other Jewish girl named Hadassah. She was raised by her cousin Mordecai after losing her parents. Now, imagine this. One day, the king of Persia decides to look for a new queen, and beautiful young women from all over his kingdom, including our Esther, are brought to his palace. Esther didn't just show up. She had to go through a whole year of beauty treatments. It sounds like quite the spa day, doesn't it? But it wasn't for fun. It was training to become queen, all this while keeping her Jewish identity secret. Now here's where things get tricky. The king fell head over heels for Esther. Out of all the young women, he chose her to be queen without knowing she was a Jew. Talk about climbing up in the world from zero to hero. But being queen wasn't only about wearing crowns and throwing parties. It came with heavy responsibilities. Here's where we see Esther's real strength shine through. There was this man, Haman, a big shot in Persia who hated Jews with passion. He convinced the king to order all Jews to be killed. When Mordecai heard about this terrible plan, he begged Esther for help. Imagine being Esther, just learned life as royalty, only to face losing your people and perhaps your own life too. Would you stand tall or hide away? Let me list out what Esther did that makes us honor her story. She fasted. Before doing anything risky, she called on everyone to fast with her for 3 days. She went uninvited before king. A big no-no at that time. If he didn't hold out his golden scepter towards you when you did that, you'd be dead. She revealed her identity. Big moment. She hosted 2 banquets for Haman and the king, and then told them she was a Jew. She spoke up boldly. This part gives me chills every time I think about it. She asked bravely, not just for her life, but for all Jews. What happened next? The king got mad, not at Esther, but at Haman, and ordered him executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. And guess what? The Jews were saved thanks to our brave Queen Esther's actions. I always take away so much from this story about stepping up despite fears when lives are online. Talk about powerful inspiration. Section 3. Ruth, the loyal convert. Ruth's story is one of true loyalty and strength. She was not originally part of the religious community she came to join. When her husband died, Ruth had a choice. She could return to her people and her gods, but she chose to stay with Naomi, her mother-in-law. Ruth's story is one of true loyalty and strength. She was not originally part of the religious community she came to join. When her husband died, Ruth had a choice. She could return to her people and her gods, but she chose to stay with Naomi, her mother-in-law. Not only did Ruth stand out for her decision to convert, but she also became the great-grandmother of King David, one important king in history. Here's how that happened. Ruth married Boaz, a good man who saw Ruth's worth. They had a son named Obed. He grew up strong under their care. Obed became Jesse's father. Jesse learned from his parents' stories. Jesse was King David's father, and so the cycle continued. All this began with Ruth's brave choice at a difficult time in her life. So we see, this biblical heroine didn't just establish any lineage, it led directly to King David. That makes Ruth's story even more remarkable. It proves how one person's faith can change history forever. By being part of this family line, she highlighted just how important she really is within the pages and teachings throughout time. Section 4. Mary Magdalene, the closest disciple. Mary Magdalene, often shrouded in mystery and intrigue, played a vital role among the disciples of Jesus. Her story tells us of a woman with firm conviction and undying loyalty. When I think about strong characters in the Bible, my mind often goes straight to Mary Magdalene. The way she showed up for Jesus speaks volumes about her unshakable faith and loving heart. For one, she didn't just follow Jesus from a distance. She was part of his circle. She traveled with him, listened to his teachings, and supported his ministry, emotionally and probably financially as well. She wasn't deterred by what others thought or said about her past. Instead, she lived her life in close connection with Jesus. Her actions spoke louder than words. Her commitment was such that even when most had abandoned hope at the foot of the cross, where he hung in pain, Mary Magdalene stood strong. Her presence was constant, a silent witness to pure devotion through life's harshest storms. As one of the few faithful women who followed Jesus till his last breath on earth, Mary Magdalene's presence highlighted crucial moments that shaped Christianity today. The crucifixion. While the many fled in fear or denial, Mary remained there by his side at Calvary's Hill. Her name is forever etched alongside this pivotal, sorrowful sacrifice. The resurrection. Early on that first Easter morning, it was Mary who reached the tomb first and found it empty. Overcome by confusion and then joy, she is remembered as the first person to see Christ risen. To understand how important this makes her within biblical narratives is profound. With each tear shed at the cross, with every step taken toward the empty tomb, through every conversation shared with others about his death and glorious rising, Mary Magdalene stands as more than just another follower. She's an inspirational figure, a rooted stone within faith's foundation, a biblical heroine whose story breathes strength into scriptures for generations. Her dedication during these essential events illustrates without question that behind great men like Jesus Christ stood great women, courageous women like Mary Magdalene, whose power reverberates throughout time. Section 5. Sarah, Mother of Nations. Sarah is one of the most amazing women in the Bible. She has a very special story. She was married to Abraham, and they were very old but did not have any children. This made them sad because they really wanted to have a family. God spoke to Abraham one day and promised him that he would have many children, as many as the stars in the sky. But Abraham was old, and so was Sarah. She was 90 years old. People thought such an old woman couldn't become a mother. But things are different with God. He can do what no one else can. Sarah went through a lot of feelings. First, she didn't believe it could be true. She even laughed when she heard about God's plan. But then something miraculous happened. Sarah became pregnant. Can you imagine how surprised she must have been? When she had her baby boy, Isaac, it showed everyone that nothing is too difficult for God. Sarah's story is important because she teaches us about faith. Even when things seem impossible, if you trust in God, He can make wonderful things happen. Miraculous birth. Despite her age of 90 years, symbol of faith, she had doubts but learned to trust God's plans. Continuation of promise. Isaac was the child through whom God's promise to Abraham would continue. Foundation of nations. Through Isaac's descendants came many nations, just like God promised Abraham. Isaac grew up knowing his birth was special, and he lived in a way that honored his mother and father's extraordinary faith. When we talk about strong women from stories of long ago, we should always remember Sarah. The lady who proved never too late is really true when you're part of a bigger plan like hers. Thanks to her strength and faithfulness, we now know about the great biblical heroines who followed her example and trusted in something bigger than themselves. Section 6. Rahab, Harlot turned Savior. Rahab's story is one that takes a twist you'd hardly expect. Labeled as a harlot, her tale unfolds in the walled city of Jericho, where she does something really brave. So, there were these two Israelite spies, right? They snuck into Jericho because their leader, Joshua, wanted to conquer the town. But they needed info about what they were up against. That's where Rahab comes in. She gives them a place to hide at her house, which is on the city wall itself. It wasn't easy peasy. The king of Jericho got wind that there were spies in town, and even knew they had rocked up at Rahab's place. So he sent his men to grab them. But Rahab was smart and quick. She hid the spies under some stalks of flax on her roof and told the king's men a story that sent them on a wild goose chase out of town. Then she went back to those spies hiding on her roof and made them promise something huge. "I've saved your necks," she said. "Now when you guys take over this place, spare my family." They agreed, but told her she had to hang a red cord out her window as a signal. Now check this out. Rahab didn't just save herself and help some spies. She became an ancient celebrity because of what she did. Fast forward through time, and you'll see Rahab pop up somewhere mighty special in Jesus' family tree. Yep, this former harlot somehow makes it into one of the most important lineages ever written down. The genealogy leading to Jesus mentioned in Matthew's part of the Good Book. Here's why it matters. Her past didn't define her future. Even though being called a harlot wasn't cool back then, or now, it didn't stop God from using her story for something big. It shows anybody can be part of God's plan. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done, your story could still be important. She brings hope. If someone with all odds against them like Rahab can end up being great, however many greats grandma to someone as big deal as Jesus, that's saying something. History wrote down everything about everyone else with fancy titles or hefty bags of gold. But there was also room for someone like Rahab, who started off with less shiny labels. Her being included shows us that anyone can make mistakes, but still get picked for incredible stuff down the line. It gives people hope that they, too, can do good things, no matter how rough their start may be. Imagine having such an unexpected turnaround, not only getting remembered thousands of years later, but also ending up right smack in one mighty significant family tree. After sending those men off by another route so no one would catch them, just like she said, there went the red cord out her window. What I find coolest about this is how brave Rahab must have been. To go against your own king and risk your neck for folks you don't even know? That takes guts, a lot of it. Conclusion. In exploring the tales of these mighty biblical heroines, I've walked through ages past. Their stories shine with the courage, wisdom, and devotion that radiate from their lives. These women weren't just figures in scripture, but icons of strength and virtue whose legacies persist through time. Their contributions to their people and their faith highlight why they are forever engraved in history as pillars of spiritual fortitude. They teach us resilience like Deborah's in her leadership, Esther's stark bravery, Ruth's unwavering loyalty, Mary Magdalene's profound devotion, Sarah's enduring faith, and Rahab's transformative decisions. Each story is a testament to the power that lies within a commitment to one's beliefs amid trials.